Hello traders, and welcome to another week of what's moving in the Forex market. As always, starting in the upper left, we've got Euro US dollar, and this pair continues to surge higher and making higher highs and higher lows as it continues to push up into resistance, which we can see here on the weekly time frame. And as a matter of fact, we've pushed to the top of this area, which has really negated it as a significant level. And at this point, it is possible for the Euro US dollar pair to continue pushing higher and eventually working its way potentially over time up towards this next resistance level around 1.2349. So that's a ways off. I mean, we'll see what happens if it can in fact even begin to trend higher and reach that area on the weekly chart. But that would be the next reference point of overhead resistance that we'd be paying attention to. Shifting back to the daily chart, though, we can see, as I said, the pair here continues to remain in this daily uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows. And really, I mean, at this point, there's no reason to trade against that trend, against this bullishness. We're just going to need to wait for a pattern, because right now there's nothing imminent setting up here on the daily chart that would suggest continued strength. So we may need to see a little bit of a rest, maybe even a little bit of a pullback. Time will tell. Shifting over to Aussie dollar, US dollar here in the upper middle chart, we can see that this continues to slowly grind its way higher, making a series of higher highs and higher lows. Nothing really clean about the movement, but it is overall bullish. If we look at the weekly chart, the weekly chart ran up into this resistance. That's what it's dealing with. So that's really the cause of this overall indecision, is the fact that we've got a weekly chart which is in a downtrend, but a daily chart which is slowly uptrending, and that imbalance, that indecision is what's creating this choppy, whippy type of movement. So overall, we want to continue trading in the direction of the trend, but with caution. So a pullback into support should produce some form of demand, but to expect it's going to move higher with any kind of fluid movement over a multi-day period is less likely. So again, focusing on those intraday levels of strength or weakness. New Zealand dollar, US dollar here in the upper right. As we can see here now, it has broken this prior support level to the left, now transitioning into what should become a new downtrend. So here's our first lower high after this failure to get through the prior high. So we had a retest at the high here, sharp move down through support. Here's our first lower high, should result in a lower low being made. So that's what I will be looking for here in this pair. But just to confirm that, we do want to take a look at the weekly, and in fact the weekly is in a downtrend. So those two time frames are in alignment, therefore a move back towards this prior low makes perfect sense. So we'll see if the daily starts to catch some momentum lower and eventually begins to break this prior low, and that would open the floodgates to further weakness, bringing us back down to these lower support levels. So, the New Zealand dollar, US dollar focus is definitely going to be more bearish. Bottom right chart, we have US dollar yen, and once again, we continue to see this pair just chopping around sideways. There's no real interest in doing anything here. Yes, you can pretty clearly see the top of the range here, just above the 120.22 level, and then you've got support right around 118.53 or so. So again, we can see those levels fairly easily. However, the movement between those points has been very sloppy overall, and there's better out there. That's what I'd be focused on. So until this pair breaks out of the range one way or the other, I'm largely uninterested in what it's doing. US dollar, Canadian dollar. Nice daily downtrend. We've been making a series of lower highs and lower lows, but recently we've had a struggle. We've seen a struggle in making lower lows. So we continue to see these lower highs, but the lows are relatively equal, which tells us that supply is still increasing, but we've not been able to really punch through this support. So I'm looking for that to take place this week. I'm going to be looking for US dollar, Canadian dollar to break through this support and really start to move lower with more momentum. And the reason I have that bias or that thought is based on the weekly chart, which, as you can see here, and as we've discussed in previous videos, has broken down from this sideways range. Right? We got a wide range bar igniting the move down, and here you can see it's been trying to hold. We've gotten several bottoming tails. If this breaks lower and closes below these lows on the daily time frame, that should signal the next wave of selling. And looking at this chart, there is plenty of room to the downside. I mean, we could come down towards the 1.16 area relatively easily and relatively quickly. So definitely room. We could even go lower than that. So this is one of the pairs that I will be watching very closely for opportunity to the downside. And finally, pound US dollar. Again, like Euro US dollar, continues to show strength. We had a nice pullback and higher low about 2 weeks ago. We've had a nice follow through, nice movement higher over the last week, and now we'll see if we get some kind of pullback or consolidation. I mean, that is really what would be most appropriate, is to see some type of corrective behavior setting up at this point. To see this continuing to move higher would likely bring it into a climactic point, and then the sell-off would likely be more severe. So best case scenario here is that this, pulls back throughout the first part of this week or consolidates, and then maybe sets up the potential for higher movement later on this week. If we look at the weekly chart, we took out this prior pivot high and pushed deeply into this next resistance level. So overall, the trend here on the weekly chart of pound US dollar is transitioning. And so, as I said, excuse me, we do probably want to expect some kind of corrective behavior here in the short term, but in the bigger picture, this is looking like it wants to move higher. So that's what I'll be looking for and expecting in the more intermediate term. But as I said, short term here, probably going to be a bit of a slower week for pound US dollar. All right, so that's how things are shaping up for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe and follow this page so that you can continue to receive updates, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, trade well, stay confident, and stay disciplined.